Okay, let's unpack this. We've received a truly fascinating array of sources today that paint a compelling picture of just how many significant challenges to the status quo have been playing out across the American political and legal landscape.
Hmm.
It feels like we're in this incredibly intense period, a true crucible, where the very foundations of our democratic norms are being tested, often daily, sometimes in surprising and interconnected ways.
Indeed. What we're observing is a profound convergence. Legal battles, economic policy shifts, and governmental pressures all hitting at once, creating a complex, interwoven narrative.
Right.
Our mission in this deep dive is to explore those pressures, specifically as they've converged around the former Trump administration, and, well, to understand their potential implications for American democracy.
Yeah, critically.
Critically, we're doing this without taking any sides, simply by diving deep into the factual content presented in your sources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't about opinion. It's about information, about understanding the threads that connect what might seem like disparate events. We've been handed a stack of material today, detailed legal analyses, incisive economic reports, and insightful commentaries on judicial proceedings and executive action.
Yeah, quite a stack.
Our goal for you, our listener, is to cut through the noise, to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, and to connect the dots so you can walk away truly well-informed with those aha moments that make sense of it all.
We're going to try and reveal how these seemingly individual challenges are, in fact, integral parts of a much larger unfolding story.
So let's kick things off with a scenario that sounds like it's ripped straight from a political thriller, but it's very real. Dramatic showdown over the limits of executive power.
Okay.
Specifically, we're talking about the California National Guard. Your sources reveal a massive lawsuit filed by California's Attorney General Rob Bonta on behalf of Governor Gavin Newsom directly against the Trump administration. At its core, it challenges the federalization of the California National Guard.
What's truly fascinating here is that this lawsuit strikes at the very heart of a law established in the tumultuous aftermath of the Civil War, the Posse Comitatus Act.
Posse Comitatus.
This isn't just some dusty legal technicality. It's a fundamental guardrail, a constitutional bulwark, specifically designed to protect the civilian nature of our government from military intervention in domestic affairs.
That's a crucial point. Most people probably haven't heard much about the Posse Comitatus Act on the evening news, but its 140-year history makes it absolutely vital.
Absolutely.
It was enshrined into law after the Civil War precisely to prevent the president from using the military as a domestic police force against its own people. It's a bedrock protection, a line that for, well, a century and a half has largely remained uncrossed. Because once you allow that line to blur, once a government can deploy its uniformed soldiers as police against its own citizens, you're talking about a direct and profound threat to fundamental freedoms and the very nature of a democratic republic.
Precisely. The deep-seated fear, which this act addresses, was that a president could abuse military power domestically, effectively turning soldiers into police.
Right.
Congress, in its wisdom, recognized this profound danger and explicitly forbade the Army from acting in a law enforcement capacity inside the United States. That principle, as you said, has held firm, forming a crucial check on executive authority.
Yet your sources indicate that California is alleging that the Trump administration quite deliberately stomped all over that line.
That's the allegation.
His decision to take control of the California National Guard and deploy them in Los Angeles, according to California's argument, wasn't about public safety at all. It was allegedly pure political theater, using real soldiers as pawns. The core allegation is that it was about Trump trying to embarrass his political rival, Governor Gavin Newsom, and to make California appear out of control for political gain.
And the allegations go much further than just intent, delving into the specific actions of these troops. California claims that instead of performing their widely understood and appreciated duties like fighting California's endemic wildfires, responding to humanitarian crises, aiding in disaster relief, or even, tackling the fentanyl epidemic.
Right, the usual stuff.
These federalized Guard members were actively participating in civilian law enforcement activities. This included tasks like traffic enforcement, immigration crackdowns, and even blockades of Los Angeles neighborhoods.
Wow.
These are precisely the types of civilian law enforcement actions that the Posse Comitatus Act explicitly forbids the military from undertaking on American soil.
This entire saga played out in federal court in San Francisco before Judge Charles Breyer, who, as an interesting side note, is the brother of former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer.
Yes, that's right.
Judge Breyer had initially issued a preliminary injunction to prevent Trump from fully commandeering the Guard, but that was challenged, leading to this full-blown trial. And from the reports, day one of that trial was apparently quite explosive.
Indeed. California's lawyers presented compelling testimony from military personnel who are actually on the ground in Los Angeles. These service members admitted under oath to engaging in activities like perimeter enforcement and establishing traffic checkpoints.
So actual police work.
This is a critical point because if military personnel are functioning as police officers, irrespective of the administration's stated intent, that's a direct violation of posse comitatus.
And then, in a move described by the sources as gaslighting, the Trump administration attempted to downplay the severity, claiming the troops weren't doing much at all.
Right, which is hard to square.
But as the sources vividly point out, it can't be both. Either there was a significant rebellion or civil unrest that legitimately required military intervention, which was the administration's initial justification for the deployment, or the 4,700 troops just, well, twiddled their thumbs.
Exactly. The contradiction is stark and raises serious questions about the truthfulness of the administration's justifications.
What's also quite notable here is the clear political calculus involved. The argument is strongly made that Trump would never have attempted such a maneuver in a red state like Texas or Alabama, which are part of his political base.
Seems unlikely.
This reinforces the idea that the deployment was less about genuine security concerns or a public safety crisis, and more about political intimidation directed squarely at a perceived political rival and a prominent blue state.
And it absolutely makes you question the intent behind the action. Witnesses testified that the streets were calm, even quiet, when the troops arrived.
So if it wasn't about immediate security, the action takes on a more ominous meaning. It was about sending a chilling message. The president can bring the military into your backyard whenever he feels like it, for whatever reason he deems fit.
That, for any democracy, is incredibly dangerous territory.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you, our listener. Why is California asking for more than just a slap on the wrist? What's at stake beyond this specific incident?
Well, California is seeking significant legal guardrails. This means they're pursuing both injunctive relief, a clear, legally binding court order blocking the federal government from repeating these actions in the future,
Okay.
and critically, declaratory relief. This declaratory relief means the court would formally and definitively state that the Trump administration did, in fact, violate the Posse Comitatus Act.
So making it official.
Exactly. This isn't just about stopping a specific act. It's about establishing a definitive legal truth, a clear precedent that future courts and administrations can immediately rely upon. This makes it significantly harder for any future president to attempt similar overreach, shaping and strengthening constitutional law for generations to come.
And if California wins at this level, the appeal path is clear. It goes straight to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
That's the next step.
Your sources indicate there's a good chance the same panel of judges who already reviewed an earlier part of this case will see again, given their deep familiarity with the facts and the significant stakes involved.
Right, continuity there.
This isn't just an isolated legal battle either. It's part of a broader, perhaps even a synthetic strategy being employed across different levels of government, pushing back.
What's truly fascinating here, and a critical insight from your sources, is the emergence of state attorneys general as increasingly vital watchdogs. They are stepping in to fill a significant void when Congress is gridlocked or, when the White House is perceived to be abusing its power.
Like a backup system.
Exactly. There's an entire robust network of Democratic attorneys general, 23 of them, from across the country, who actively work together as a kind of legal firewall against the Trump administration's alleged overreaches.
23, wow.
They share resources, legal strategies, and coordinate lawsuits to ensure the rule of law is enforced, even when the federal government itself is alleged to be sidestepping it.
So they're creating this sort of synthetic resistance network.
You could see it that way. This collaboration provides a united front, ensuring no single state is standing alone against potential executive overreach, especially concerning issues like military deployment.
Okay, from the National Guard in California, let's turn our attention to the nation's capital and another intense showdown over executive power. Donald Trump's alleged attempt to take direct control of the D.C. Police Department.
Another flashpoint.
This time, the District of Columbia itself is suing Trump and his administration. Your sources make it abundantly clear. Under the D.C. Home Rule Act and the U.S. Constitution, the president cannot unilaterally take over D.C. police.
No, there's a process.
He can only request assistance through the mayor and the chief of police. But Trump, it's alleged, was actively trying to decapitate that chain of command, seeking direct control.
And the judge assigned to this case is Judge Anna Reyes. Her background is not just impressive, it provides crucial context for understanding the rigor and independence she brings to the bench.
Tell us about her.
She is the first Hispanic and openly LGBTQ+ judge ever appointed to the federal bench in Washington, D.C. A Harvard Law magna cum laude graduate, she was appointed by President Biden and confirmed in 2023.
Impressive credential.
Beyond her academic credentials, she honed her skills as a partner at a top law firm, leading complex international litigation, and notably, she dedicated significant pro bono work to representing asylum seekers, an experience that clearly informs her deep understanding of power dynamics in vulnerable populations.
Beyond her qualifications, her judicial style is what truly stands out in your sources. She's described as razor sharp, known for grilling attorneys whose arguments don't hold up, almost surgically dissecting their reasoning.
Doesn't suffer fools gladly, it sounds like.
Her opinions are consistently deeply rooted in facts, not politics, and she's famous for not letting anyone skate by with half-baked reasoning. She expects meticulous preparation and holds legal arguments to the highest standard.
Her track record of clashing with the Trump administration is particularly relevant to this current case. She notably pushed back against efforts to ban transgender Americans from military service.
I remember reading about that.
During those hearings, she directly confronted government lawyers, relentlessly probing whether their justification for the ban was based on the premise that transgender people were inherently untrustworthy or lacked integrity. She refused to let them dodge the fundamental question, demanding a direct answer.
And this is where her legendary Socratic method came into powerful play. She used a particularly sharp hypothetical to expose the flawed logic.
How did that go?
She asked a Department of Justice attorney where he went to law school. When he replied, University of Virginia, she then asked him to imagine if she simply banned all UVA law graduates from practicing in her courtroom, deeming them dishonest without any individual evidence.
Oof.
That's pointed. It was a perfectly crafted, almost synthetic example designed to demonstrate how blanket judgments rooted in prejudice or unsupported assertions simply don't stand up to rigorous scrutiny or the rule of law.
This rigorous approach, however, did not endear her to the Trump legal team, who, in fact, filed a judicial misconduct complaint against her, a complaint that, notably, is still pending.
Still pending. Interesting.
This history sets the stage for what we can expect from Trump's lawyers in the D.C. police case. Almost certainly, a motion for her recusal.
Trying to get her off the case.
But here's an important insight. When a judge's rigor and independence are misconstrued as bias, especially by powerful actors being challenged, it often reveals a deliberate tactic to undermine authority rather than a genuine concern about impartiality. Judge Reyes' track record demonstrates a consistent commitment to holding power accountable, not political leaning.
So, with all that in mind, the District of Columbia is seeking an emergency order from Judge Reyes to stop this attempted takeover of their police department.
They need immediate action.
She has a couple of strategic tools at her disposal, each with different implications. She could issue an administrative stay, which is a very quick pause, essentially freezing the status quo immediately.
Okay.
Or she could issue a temporary restraining order, TRO, which is the stronger, more formal injunction, but also more easily appealed.
The appealability factor.
Exactly.
Strategically, an administrative stay would be a very effective move to immediately block Trump's team. Appellate courts generally lack jurisdiction to review administrative stays, preventing a quick appeal and buying valuable time.
So it buys time for a fuller hearing.
Precisely. Your sources speculate that Judge Reyes' likely move will be to issue an administrative stay, blocking Trump's action, ordering full legal briefs from both sides, and then setting a preliminary injunction hearing for next week. This would ensure D.C. law enforcement remains under local control while the legal battle unfolds, preventing an immediate and potentially chaotic federal takeover.
So what does this all mean for you and for the delicate balance between federal authority and local democracy across the country? This case, while centered in D.C., is about far more than just one judge or one police department.
It's bigger than D.C.
It's about the fundamental question of whether a president can simply steamroll local democracy when it suits his agenda. The slippery slope here is clear. If the D.C. police can be unilaterally seized, what about other federally administered cities, or even broader claims of emergency powers that could expand presidential authority beyond its constitutional limits without a strong basis in law?
Judge Reyes has consistently demonstrated in previous rulings, such as those concerning transgender service members or international students, a deep understanding of the stakes involved when government action threatens vulnerable communities.
Right.
She has explicitly called out policies that display an utter lack of concern for human interests. Her lived experience as an immigrant, a woman, and someone in the LGBTQ+ community doesn't dictate her rulings, but it does inform her empathy and her rigorous application of the law, making her uniquely attuned to the potential implications of power abuses on real people and the integrity of institutions.
So she gets the human impact.
She's not just looking at legal paperwork. She's looking at the broader picture. The delicate balance between federal power and local autonomy, and whether the rule of law can withstand raw political power.
Moving from the immediate battlegrounds of executive power, let's turn to something that strikes at the very bedrock of our democracy itself. Your sources highlight a truly alarming development. What have been called the most important Supreme Court case of our lifetime when it comes to voting rights.
That's a huge claim.
The stark claim is that this case could completely gut what's left of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That is an absolutely colossal statement for our system of governance.
This is indeed a potentially seismic shift, a moment that echoes some of the most challenging periods in American history. To truly grasp its severity, we must first remember the harrowing origins of the Voting Rights Act. It was quite literally born in blood in 1965. Specifically from the brutal events on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. There, civil rights activists like John Lewis and Amelia Boynton were met with batons, tear gas, and unimaginable violence simply for exercising their fundamental right to march for the vote.
That shocking brutality, televised for the nation, catalyzed a profound shift in public consciousness. And out of that violence, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 into law.
Its fundamental purpose was to make the 14th and 15th Amendments, which guaranteed equal protection and voting rights, real and actionable, serving as an indispensable bulwark against centuries of racist voting laws and practices.
It worked, didn't it?
And it demonstrably worked. Its passage led to an immediate surge in Black voter registration and significantly increased Black representation at all levels of government, finally opening pathways to political power that had been systematically denied.
However, your sources note a consistent, slow chipping away at the VRA by the Roberts Court over the past 2 decades.
Yes, that's been a trend.
The most significant and arguably devastating blow came in 2013 with the landmark ruling in Shelby County v. Holder.
I remember that one well. This decision effectively killed Section 5 of the VRA, which had required states with a history of racial discrimination in voting to get federal pre-approval for any changes to their voting laws or district maps.
The pre-clearance requirement.
Exactly. The Supreme Court's majority logic was that racism isn't really a problem anymore in voting, effectively deeming Section 5 outdated. As subsequent events have proven, that premise was demonstrably and tragically false.
And the consequences were immediate and dramatic. Within hours, literally hours, of that Shelby County decision being handed down, states like Texas and North Carolina rushed to pass new voting restrictions, from strict voter ID laws to limitations on early voting.
The floodgates opened.
It was, as many observers described, open season on voting rights. That ruling left Section 2 of the VRA as the last guardrail, the only remaining federal tool allowing lawsuits if a voting law or district map was proven to discriminate against minorities.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Shelby County was the initial profound strike, weakening the VRA's preventative power and setting the ominous stage for what we're witnessing now with the challenge to Section 2.
So Section 2 is what's on the chopping block now.
A successful challenge here would have an even more profound, almost cataclysmic impact. The current case to watch, which could be this final blow, is Calais v. Louisiana, though it's also referred to as Calais v. Landry.
Okay, Calais v. Louisiana.
The context is that Louisiana, despite being about 1/3 Black, historically had only one Black majority congressional district out of 7. Federal courts had ordered them to draw a second.
So Louisiana, compelled by court order, drew a new map. It was, by all accounts, an awkward one, stretching like a political Frankenstein from Shreveport to Baton Rouge to finally create that second Black majority district.
Yeah, geography wasn't the primary concern there.
But then, a group of non-African American voters challenged this new map, arguing it discriminated against them by using race too much in its drawing.
Okay, the reverse discrimination argument.
But instead of simply ruling on the legality of this specific map, your sources reveal that the Supreme Court, in an almost unprecedented move, dropped a bombshell.
What was the bombshell?
The question they posed was, is Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act unconstitutional?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
direct. That is the nightmare scenario. Civil rights lawyers and advocates have long warned about a direct frontal assault on the last meaningful protection within the VRA.
It goes way beyond just Louisiana's map.
It goes beyond a specific mapping dispute. It questions the very legal foundation of the statute itself.
So for you, our listener, what does this all mean for everyday Americans and the future of their vote? If Section 2 is struck down, the consequences, as detailed by your sources, are dire.
Dyer is putting it mildly. Black and Latino representation could plummet across the country. Experts estimate that at least 11 existing Black majority congressional districts across the Deep South could be immediately eliminated.
11 districts just like that.
Potentially. State legislatures and local governments would gain free rein to redraw maps and enact voting laws without any meaningful fear of lawsuits under the VRA.
This would represent a rollback of rights not seen since Reconstruction, effectively turning the clock back to the 1870s, when white supremacist governments used every imaginable trick, from poll taxes to literacy tests, to systematically suppress Black votes and entrench racial discrimination.
It's chilling. Some scholars are calling this potential outcome Shelby County on steroids, as it would remove the very last effective federal tool for challenging discriminatory voting practices.
And the political ramifications are equally stark. Analysts estimate it could directly lead to a gain of at least 16 Republican seats in Congress,
16 seats.
potentially swinging House control not through persuasion or policy appeal, but by fundamentally changing the rules of democratic engagement.
Wow.
This impact would also tragically trickle down to local school boards, city councils, and state legislative bodies, effectively silencing minority voices and undermining local representation.
The Supreme Court's potential justification for this action is also under intense scrutiny. Justice Kavanaugh has hinted at a temporal argument, the idea that Section 2, despite its critical function, had an unstated expiration date.
An expiration date, but Congress reauthorized it.
Exactly. This is asserted despite the fact that Congress overwhelmingly reauthorized the VRA, including Section 2, in 1982 for another 25 years, after extensive hearings and evidence demonstrating its continued necessity due to ongoing voting discrimination.
So the argument feels a bit constructed.
This approach isn't interpretation. It's widely framed by your sources as legislating from the bench, undermining the democratic process that led to its reauthorization.
So the critical question becomes, why is this happening now with such urgency? Your sources attribute it to a decades-long, meticulously planned project by the conservative legal movement.
A long game.
For years, they understood they couldn't dismantle the landmark civil rights laws of the 1960s through Congress, so they shifted their strategy to the courts. With the Supreme Court supermajority now firmly in place, they perceive this as their ultimate chance.
The opportunity they've been waiting for.
Justices like Clarence Thomas have long advocated for the VRA's demise, and other conservative justices, including Alito, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh, are seen as potential allies, along with Chief Justice Roberts, who authored the Shelby County decision and has a long history of opposing aspects of the VRA.
If Section 2 falls, the immediate impacts would be devastating and widespread. We would likely see immediate redistricting chaos across the nation even before the 2026 election cycle begins, as states rush to redraw maps without any federal oversight.
Chaos before the midterms.
It would effectively end the Justice Department's real tools to challenge discriminatory maps and laws, leading to a potential collapse of Black and minority political power that took over a century of struggle to build.
It's hard to overstate the potential impact.
Scholars are warning this would be nothing less than the single most catastrophic moment for minority voters since the 19th century.
So facing such a profound threat, what can be done? Your sources suggest a few critical paths for you, the citizen. First, awareness is paramount. We need to sound the alarm now and ensure as many people as possible understand the gravity of what's at stake.
Absolutely, education is key.
Second, Congress has a crucial role to play. Passing new, robust voting rights legislation, such as the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which stalled previously, would face immense pressure for passage if Section 2 is struck down, as it would be the only legislative recourse.
Congress would have to act.
And finally, elections matter, perhaps now more than ever. The composition of Congress, the presidency, and even lower court judges, all of these elements connect directly back to whether America will remain a truly inclusive democracy that ensures voting rights for everyone.
Every level matters.
Now, on a related note concerning the very fabric of our constitutional bedrock, your sources also detail the former Trump administration's repeated and ultimately losing attempts to roll back birthright citizenship.
Ah, yes, the 14th Amendment challenges.
They chronicle Trump's 4-time losing streak in court on this very specific issue.
The central issue here, which courts have consistently upheld against Trump's challenges, is the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It clearly, unequivocally guarantees that anyone born within the U.S. is automatically a citizen.
Pretty clear language.
This principle has been reaffirmed time and again.
It really hammers home how often we see these high-profile legal challenges used less as a genuine, serious effort to change established law and more as a pure campaign talking point or even a deliberate distraction.
More political theater.
Your sources strongly suggest that Trump's immigration strategy on birthright citizenship was primarily about political theater and providing talking points for rallies, knowing full well he cannot, under the Constitution, erase the 14th Amendment with the stroke of a pen or executive order.
He knew the legal reality.
It's about generating headlines and keeping a specific narrative alive for his base, rather than achieving any actual legally viable policy change. Let's shift gears now to the economy, or Trumponomics, as it's often called. One of the central promises from the former administration was to get prices under control to make life affordable again for everyday Americans.
A common political promise.
But your sources paint a very different picture of the reality, one of increased inflation and consumer burden.
The data presented in your sources indicates quite clearly that inflation did not go down. It increased. Core inflation, which is a key measure focusing on the underlying price trends by stripping out volatile categories like food and energy,
Right, the more stable measure.
is reported to be up 3.1% year over year.
And what does 3.1% core inflation mean for you, the consumer? As our sources explain, it translates directly to your grocery bill and household budget.
You feel it every week.
If you had $100 for groceries last year, this year you'd walk out with fewer items for that same $100. It's the same basket, but you're paying more because the purchasing power of your dollar has diminished.
And to put that in context, the Federal Reserve, our central bank, generally aims for about 2% inflation for a healthy, stable economy.
2% is the target.
Your sources highlight that Trump's policies, particularly his reliance on tariffs, consistently push that number closer to 4%, which is double the Fed's target, indicating a significant inflationary pressure.
This raises an important question, one that our sources delve into. When economic policies are framed as broadly beneficial to the nation, perhaps even patriotic, but the burden disproportionately falls on the average consumer, how transparent is the economic discourse truly being?
A fundamental question. This is particularly pertinent when examining tariffs.
Absolutely. The former president loved to brag about the revenue collected from tariffs, citing figures like $26 billion or $58 billion, presenting it as money directly coming into the U.S. Treasury, supposedly paid by other countries.
That was the claim. Mexico will pay for it, etc.
But the reality painted by your sources is far more complex. Tariffs are, in fact, a shrinking revenue stream. Other countries don't just passively keep paying these taxes, they adapt.
Of course they do.
They actively find new trading partners, like Canada shifting trade to Europe, or Asian markets pivoting to doing more business with each other. They dodge the tariffs, meaning the U.S. isn't collecting nearly as much as promised.
It's like trying to sell lemonade for $20 a cup. Maybe a few adventurous people buy it at first, but then they quickly go to the stand selling it for $1, or they just make their own.
Great analogy. And critically, as your sources unequivocally point out, it's not China or Mexico or whatever other country Trump was targeting that ultimately pays that cost.
No, it doesn't work that way.
It's you, the American consumer, and the American businesses that import goods. Tariffs are fundamentally a hidden tax that you end up bearing in the form of higher prices.
This tariff revenue also proved woefully insufficient to plug the massive hole in federal revenue that was created by the significant tax cuts primarily benefiting the wealthy.
So it didn't make up for the tax cuts.
Not even close. It's aptly likened to bailing out the Titanic with a Dixie cup, a symbolic gesture that utterly fails to address the scale of the fiscal gap.
Now here's where things get even more concerning. For the fundamental integrity of our economic data. Your sources revealed that the Trump team has openly admitted to wanting to change how we measure the economy.
Cooking the books, essentially.
To redefine gross domestic product, GDP, to tweak unemployment statistics, essentially to rewrite the official scorecard so that it would always look like they're winning, regardless of the actual underlying economic realities. Kind of a synthetic way to guarantee good news.
This intention is deeply problematic for transparency, accountability, and the public's trust in objective economic reporting. The appointment of E.J. Antoni to oversee the Bureau of Labor Statistics is cited as a prime example of this alleged strategy.
E.J. Antoni. Who is he?
He's described not as some seasoned, apolitical statistician, but as a MAGA loyalist, a Heritage Foundation economist, and a partisan soldier.
Not exactly an impartial numbers guy.
The analogy used is striking. It's akin to putting a football superfan in charge of refereeing the Super Bowl. The profound danger being that it undermines the credibility of the very data that Wall Street, Main Street, and indeed the entire global financial community rely on for accurate, unbiased economic understanding and decision-making.
So for you, our listener, what does this all mean for the promise of America First if the actual numbers from independent analyses show the wealthy getting richer and the poor getting poorer?
What does the CBO say?
The Independent Congressional Budget Office, CBO, an organization still operating outside of direct political control, ran the numbers on Trump's latest budget proposal. And the findings are stark. The poorest Americans, the bottom 10% of households, actually lost about $1,200 per household.
Lost money.
But the wealthiest Americans, the top 10%, gained nearly $14,000 per household.
A $14,000 gain versus a $1,200 loss. That's stark. It's a striking contrast to the populist America First rhetoric.
Right.
The painful irony, as your sources point out, is that Trump's own base, often red state voters in rural or small-town America, are frequently the ones hit hardest by cuts to essential federal funding, food assistance programs, and Medicaid.
So the policies hurt his own supporters.
These policies, despite their stated aim, were not hurting the billionaires. They were hurting families in small-town America.
Wow.
The data indicates a clear upward redistribution of wealth, not an outward or inward one.
And as if that weren't enough, your sources delve into Trump's alleged undermining of national security through what's described as a short-sighted approach to critical technologies.
This sounds serious.
And this next point really makes you stop and think about strategic foresight versus immediate gain.
The core concern here is the NVIDIA deal with China. NVIDIA, a leading U.S. chip maker known for its advanced AI and high-performance chips, was reportedly allowed to sell advanced AI and military-grade chips to China.
Military-grade chips to China.
That's the report. This transaction occurred despite existing U.S. export controls designed specifically to prevent cutting-edge American technology from falling into the hands of rival nations and strengthening, for instance, the Chinese military's capabilities.
So circumventing our own rules.
And the alleged justification for allowing this deal to proceed, circumventing those critical export controls, a 15% tribute payment of $3 billion to the U.S. Treasury.
A tribute payment. Let that sink in. Is our long-term national security, our technological edge, and our strategic geopolitical positioning truly worth a quick payday like that, especially when it involves highly sensitive dual-use technology?
This raises an important question, a crucial insight into a potential pattern. When economic policies and national security decisions are intertwined, how often are short-term financial gains prioritized over long-term strategic implications, especially when it comes to critical technology?
It feels like a very short-sighted calculation.
The NVIDIA deal, as presented in your sources, suggests a potential prioritization of immediate monetary benefits, regardless of the profound long-term consequences for America's technological superiority and geopolitical power dynamics in an increasingly competitive world. This highlights a concerning, maybe synthetic approach to policy, where immediate financial returns seem to supersede broader, more complex strategic considerations.
Now let's connect some more dots and discuss the broader pressures impacting our nation, some of them quite shocking, and the insidious hollowing out of critical government institutions.
Okay, the bigger picture.
First up, the Epstein files, whispers of secret White House meetings, and the alleged weaponization of the Department of Justice. Your sources report on these whispers, these rumors of secret White House meetings about the infamous Jeffrey Epstein files.
Always lurking in the background, that story.
The central lingering question posed is, why now and why in secret?
This suggests a profound level of concern within the former administration about potential exposure. Lawsuits are reportedly piling up, vigorously pushing to force the public disclosure of these files, which could expose deeply unsettling connections and individuals tied to Epstein's network, potentially reaching into high echelons of power.
So fear of what might come out.
The implication, as suggested, is that Trump's alleged obsessive focus on who's leaking, rather than on the serious business of governing, is a telling sign of walls closing in, indicating deep internal anxiety about what might be revealed.
And while that intense internal focus on leaks was allegedly consuming the White House, the Department of Justice under Trump is characterized by your sources not as an independent institution upholding justice, but as a political attack dog.
That's a strong charge.
Specific examples cited include alleged direct orders to go after political rivals, like Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James, and even to investigate the Obama administration more broadly, seemingly without specific cause.
The game here, as meticulously described in the sources, was often not for these cases to genuinely win in court. Rather, it was to generate immediate headlines.
The headlines.
Such as DOJ opens criminal investigation into Adam Schiff. Regardless of the eventual legal outcome, which often saw these cases falter, the headline itself served its primary purpose to feed a specific narrative to Trump's base.
So it's performative prosecution.
The overarching goal, it's alleged, was to create chaos, distract from genuine failures, and keep the political movement alive by constantly pointing fingers at the so-called deep state enemies or political opponents. It's a very synthetic approach to legal strategy, crafted purely for media impact rather than judicial success.
This alleged weaponization extends to truly unprecedented and alarming suggestions, such as Trump's idea of sending U.S. troops into Mexico to target drug cartels.
Invading Mexico, this directly ties back to our earlier discussion about the Posse Comitatus Act and the strict limits on military action.
Right, Posse Comitatus again.
Such a move, unilaterally sending U.S. troops into a sovereign nation to conduct domestic law enforcement, would be profoundly illegal under that very law, which prevents the U.S. military from acting as a domestic police force, even internationally, without specific congressional authorization for such a military operation.
So how would he justify it?
Trump's alleged justification, framing it as an emergency and an invasion at the border, appears to be a desperate attempt to bypass existing laws and unilaterally expand executive power far beyond its constitutional bounds, both domestically and internationally. This raises crucial questions about the potential for executive overreach on a global scale.
Think about the dangerous precedent that sets for you, our listener. If a president can simply declare an emergency or an invasion and then use troops against whoever he arbitrarily sees as the enemy, what stops him from turning the military inward?
Against Americans.
Against American citizens protesting, against perceived political rivals, or against any group that challenges his authority. That's a truly chilling thought, one that undermines the very principle of civilian control of the military.
Indeed. And while these high-profile, dramatic battles are taking place, there's a quieter but equally, if not more, damaging trend documented in your sources. The hollowing out of government institutions.
The brain drain.
They emphasize the sheer number of highly qualified people leaving government. Top prosecutors, experienced FBI leaders, senior Department of Justice attorneys, and other career civil servants, either because they were fired or because they refused to be part of what's described as a circus of political maneuvering and alleged ethical compromises.
And the consequences of this brain drain are severe, impacting you directly. The people remaining in these critical roles are often described as either the least qualified, the most loyal to Trump, or both.
Loyalty over competence.
This phenomenon, as your sources argue, not only weakens the Department of Justice, but also fundamentally makes America less safe by gutting the very institutions designed to protect citizens from crime, corruption, terrorism, and ensure the functioning of our civil society.
When expertise and institutional memory are systematically removed, the ability of government to serve and protect is profoundly diminished.
This leads us to another fascinating insight. The emergence of state attorneys general as critical watchdogs, filling a void when Congress is gridlocked or the White House is perceived to be abusing power.
We saw examples of this at the state level, with Texas Democrats blocking quorum to fight voter suppression laws, and in response, the extreme threats from Republicans to send law enforcement, even the FBI or state police, to other states like Illinois or California to drag Democrats back.
Unbelievable. Crossing state lines to compel legislators.
This exemplifies how Trumpism trickles down, creating similar aggressive tactics at the state level, mirroring the alleged federal overreach we've discussed.
But on the other side, as we touched on earlier with the California National Guard case, there's an entire network of Democratic attorneys general, 23 of them, who work together as a kind of legal firewall against the Trump administration.
The firewall, yes. They effectively pool resources, share legal strategies, and coordinate lawsuits to ensure the rule of law is enforced, particularly when the federal government is allegedly refusing to play by the rules or actively undermining established norms.
So it's like they've synthesized a coordinated defense mechanism.
That's a good way to put it. This collaboration is profoundly powerful and has been a crucial line of defense. They've been on the front lines, for example, protecting consumer rights, defending critical environmental regulations, and, as we discussed, stopping military overreach.
So they cover a lot of ground.
Their united front ensures that individual states are not standing alone in these critical battles. This network represents a dynamic, adaptive mechanism within the federal system, a crucial line of defense for constitutional norms and institutional integrity against challenges from within the executive branch. It's a powerful example of how parts of the system can synthesize new forms of resistance when traditional checks and balances are strained. Hashtag tag check tag outro.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's abundantly clear we've explored a complex, interconnected web of challenges and pressures. We've seen a pattern of convergence, legal battles over executive power pushing constitutional boundaries, fundamental norms like the Posse Comitatus Act and the Voting Rights Act being tested at the highest courts.
Critical norms under fire.
Economic policies that, despite their rhetoric, reportedly burden everyday consumers and redistribute wealth upwards, and the alleged hollowing out of crucial government institutions.
A multi-pronged situation.
These aren't isolated events. They are undeniably interconnected threads in a larger narrative about the state and resilience of American democracy, with significant legal precedents being set in courtrooms from San Francisco to D.C. and ultimately at the Supreme Court.
Indeed. What we've seen today is a powerful reminder that democracy isn't something we just inherit and assume will stick around without effort.
It needs defending.
It's something we actively defend, sometimes in the streets, sometimes at the ballot box. And as we've explored in great detail today, often in the intricate, often unseen battles within the courtroom.
Right.
These ongoing battles are fundamentally shaping the balance of power between the people and the presidency, and indeed between federal and state authorities for years to come. So for you, our listener, here's a final thought to ponder. As these foundations of democracy are challenged from within, what is the single most important institution to defend and why?
A truly powerful question to ponder, and one that resonates deeply after today's exploration. If you found this deep dive useful, if you want more deep dives into the cases and controversies shaping our democracy, do us a favor. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on that question, and don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive.
We'd love to hear from you.
We're building a community here of people who care about understanding the truth and protecting our freedoms, and we'd love for you to be a part of it.